Okay, so Nintendo is doing some weird power trippy type stuff when it comes to the update on their user agreement for Switch and Switch 2. And I know lately it might seem like I've been bashing Nintendo while hyping up Sega, but trust me, I do like games from both companies. One's just acting a little bit more unhinged right now over the other. Or are they? I mean, everyone seems to be talking about how controlling Nintendo has gotten with their new user agreement, but after a little digging, I realized that I might have jumped to conclusions too quickly. So, without further ado, here's a breakdown of the new Nintendo user agreement and why it's not as evil as you think. Let's get into it. So just for reference, what is user agreement? Well, it's a legally binding contract between a customer and a provider of some type of product. Now, these types of agreements are typically used for things that are online, like subscriptions, social media, and so on and so forth. Not for something like buying a stuffed animal or anything physical, really. Interestingly though, video games seem to fall into an awkward in-between situation that I'll explain in just a minute. But as of right now that we know what a user agreement is, let's look at Nintendo's and see why everyone's freaking out over this section in particular. Quote, subject to the terms of this agreement, Nintendo grants you non-exclusive, non-transferable, revocable license to use the Nintendo account service solely for your personal and non-commercial use. For clarity, the Nintendo account services are licensed, not sold to you, and you may not make use of the Nintendo account service except as expressly authorized by this agreement. Without limitation, you agree that you may not A. Publish, copy, modify, reverse engineer, lease, rent, decompile, disassemble, distribute, offer for sale, or create derivative works of any portion of Nintendo account services. B. Bypass, modify, decrypt, defeat, tamper with, or otherwise circumvent any of the functions or protections of the Nintendo account services, including through the use of any hardware or software that would cause the Nintendo account services to operate other than in accordance with its documentation and intended use. C. Obtain, install, or use any unauthorized copies of Nintendo account services. Or D. Exploit the Nintendo account services in any manner other than to use them in accordance with the applicable documentation and intended use, in each case without Nintendo's written consent or express authorization, or unless otherwise expressly permitted by applicable law. You acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account services and or the applicable Nintendo device permanently unusable in whole or in part. End quote. So, basically, you can't do anything with the games and console you buy without Nintendo's approval. And if you don't, they will render it all useless. Or bricked, as the internet seems to call it. Which can indeed cause a lot of problems for a lot of gamers, especially for people in the modding and preservation scenes. Modifying your console or games, even for harmless or creative reasons, is a violation. That's wild. Think about all the fan-made translations, ROM hacks, and custom game mods that have kept dead franchises alive way longer than Nintendo ever bothered to. Say goodbye to it. And it doesn't stop at mods. The agreement also talks about the mandatory updates. And unlike on PC, you don't get to choose when or if they're installed. And if an update bricks your system, too bad. If the server shuts down, that game might stop working altogether. I had this happen to me in a way with my Wii U version of Breath of the Wild. I wanted to get the DLC pack for it, but because I waited till after the Wii U eShop closed, I can't. Not now, not ever. Unless, of course, I buy the Switch version and then get the DLC pack that way, but I'm not gonna pay extra money for just that. And I know what you're probably thinking. This control is all because of the new games. Because with the new games, you're just buying a key that gives you access, not the actual game. Well, yes and no. First off, there's a lot of mixed signals about the whole game key situation. Some say Nintendo is mostly moving in that direction, others claim it'll only appear to big first-party titles, and some say that third-party developers are the only ones using it. So it's hard to say for sure until the console drops in about 2 weeks whether any of that will be true. But here's the kicker. Whether Nintendo goes the game key route or not, they'd still have the same amount of control over your games. Because, physical copy or not, you don't own the game. You own a license. Even if you look up Nintendo's user agreement that isn't the updated one, it says, quote, "Neither the sale, transfer, license, nor your use of the system shall transfer any title or ownership, including the software, of any and all intellectual property, namely intellectual property rights, hardware, software code, documents, and any other information such as know-how, owned by Nintendo or any third party. We reserve all rights that we have not expressly granted to you in this agreement," end quote. And again, you can see it stated 2 other times within this agreement. License, not owned, here and here. Any video game is considered software. There's no distinction of physical copies or digital within this agreement. So all of that, you don't technically own. Which is crazy. Why is it that Nintendo gets to say you don't own something when you physically bought it, and have it in your house, either on your shelf or a hard drive? Nintendo is such an evil company, right? And yet, literally every other video game company does this. Come take a look at PlayStation's user agreement. It says, "Use of terms like own, purchase, or buy does not imply any transfer of ownership, content, data, or software." Now take a look at Xbox's user agreement. The Xbox software is licensed to you, not sold. You may not copy or reverse engineer it. And yes, if you look down a little more ways, they basically say they can brick your console too. So, Nintendo's not even the first person to do that. Anyway, if you're thinking that also this might just be reserved for console-making companies, no. Even Sega, who doesn't make consoles anymore, says in bold right up at the top of the agreement, this software is licensed, not sold. Oh, and also PC people, you're not safe either. Here's what your user agreement looks like on Steam. Once again, licensed, not sold. So, while you do seem to technically own your consoles in most cases, as well as your computer, obviously, you don't own the games you play them on. Just the license to play the games. And even still, when it comes to consoles, updates are mandatory. So you don't even have the control to say yes or no to an update. Unless you don't want the thing to work anymore, I guess. So, yeah, we live in a time where you don't really own your stuff, even when it feels like you do. And I get why a lot of people are freaked out by Nintendo's new user agreement. On paper, it kind of sounds like they're on some authoritarian power trip. But in reality, they're just catching up to everyone else. It stinks, but it's not unique to Nintendo. But here's the real issue. Just because everyone is doing it doesn't mean we shouldn't question it. So instead of latching on to Nintendo is bad, we all need to stop and read every single user agreement before pointing fingers at a specific company. It's depressing, I know, but it's reality. So what do you think? Do you think it's still just Nintendo being a jerk? Or is this a bigger issue than just them? Let me know down in the comments. And hey, if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!